What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations. I'm the host of Epic Conversations, 2020 Podcast News and 2018 Innovation Award winner given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. And once a month, I host a podcast, live broadcast for fathers and dads, the only one in the world that is sponsored by Dove Men Care, and it's also co-sponsored by Dad Central, Canada's national fatherhood organization. As always, I like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. We're broadcasting live January 24th. Hope everyone is safe and doing okay, the best that they can under these times. Most Sunday afternoons at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, I do host a conversation or host an event called Black Canada Talking. And what it's all about is providing Black Canadians the opportunity to give their takes and POVs on stories that are of importance to them. And once in a while, we'll slip some people in to just find out a little bit about what they do. And this week, we have another new friend for the Black Canada Talking Dr. Vibe Show, Keziah Myers. She believes in the skills and uniqueness of Canada and knows that there is so much music and artist talent to be discovered. Currently, she is in a cross-collective role. She works with SOCAN, which is the Society of Composers, Authors, and Music Publishers of Canada, and Resound. Her main role is to educate media and non-media organizations about the importance of music licensing and facilitate the initial process of getting songwriters their royalties. Prior to this, she held position of operations lead for the A&R team at SOCAN. She was instrumental in changing processes and enabling international offices to better serve 150,000 members. She was also the label operations manager at G7 Records, Universal Music, and a publicist at a music entertainment marketing firm in New York. She also has done other things like represented people like Drake, Maroon 5, Kim Davis, DSVN, Ghetto Concept, Christina Sayers, Savannah Ray, and many more. She's held just so many things in her, and she just keeps on going. She also has held positions in label operations management, publicity, sat on entertainment and music organization boards, adjudicated as part of Factor, which is the foundation assisting Canadian talent on recordings, and Juno juries. For those who do not know the Juno Awards, it's Canada's version of the Grammy Awards. And she's also been a guest presenter for colleges and high schools in Toronto. This lady has a long bio, but you know what? We're just going to get her on the show. Keziah Myers, come on down. Welcome, welcome.
Hi, how are you?
I'm outstanding and blessed. How are you doing?
I'm amazing, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, the pleasure's mine. This is long overdue, and we finally got it to happen. I finally got your email address right, you know?
Yes, I know.
That's it. Well, we're really happy to have you share with us today. And on an area of the music/entertainment industry, especially an area that you and I, before we came on live, that's especially Black entertainers are still not fully aware of the business side. So we're looking that you're going to provide added positive value for us today. But before we get to that, let's get a little background about yourself. Where were you born, where you grew up, etc.?
Okay. I am born in Toronto, Ontario, and I grew up there also on the east side of the city. I was born to two parents who were heavily involved in music, not necessarily the music industry of which that I'm part of, but I grew up surrounded by music, whether it was James Brown, whether it was Aretha Franklin, whether it was Fred Hammond when he was performing, and all of the opportunities to be exposed to genres in between. I definitely grew up eclectic, so to speak. So that's where my musical background comes from. And then when I was 3, I was thrown into piano. So I'm a classically trained musician, a pianist at first, and then I picked up the flute. And then I picked up the violin, and throughout the years, I've definitely done my fair share of singing, including Roy Thompson Hall. So Music is where it's at. Growing up here in Toronto has been a great epicenter for music, and seeing the development of that from those that started out with Maestro Fresh West all the way to Drake and The Weeknd, current day, being able to be a part of that ecosystem and really be a part of bringing eyes to Toronto has been exceptional.
That's absolutely fantastic. Question for you. So music was in your journey from a young age. Was it something that you wanted to pursue in a professional realm?
As a performer, no, no. Um, I did grow up in a Black household, which traditionally means you hear the word, that's not a real career.
Education, education,
Yeah,
education.
education. So actually, my father was a bass player, is a bass player, but was a very well-known bass player in the gospel circles in Canada, and playing for groups like Sharon Riley and the Faith Chorale, playing for
Oh,
Karen Burke and the Toronto Mass Choir. He was the bass player for Andre Crouch when he came to Canada. Yeah. So my dad is a phenomenal bass player, and he had been told by his parents that that wasn't the way to go. So my dad was bass player by Friday, Saturday, Sunday night,
yeah.
and working at the Toronto Stock Exchange by day. And so, yeah, I know, right?
Wow, what a
Yeah.
dichotomy. All right.
Yeah. So I followed in the footsteps of the business for the sake of two things. Number one, I don't believe I'm as creative as so many other people that I work with. Like I said, I'm a classically trained musician. So for me, notation is great. If it's already written, I'm happy to play. If it's already written, I'm happy to sing. But I'm not one to sit down and write those by myself. And then the second thing was the security that was passed, the security or the thought of security that was passed down through the family line, which was, okay, well, how are you going to eat every 2 weeks? And how are you going to do this? And so I didn't give it much thought, again, because I didn't feel that I was that creative, but I knew I wanted to be in the space. So for me, the difficulty was actually finding out that there were careers in the space and navigating that space. And that actually didn't show up until I went to university. While I was in high school, all through school, up until the end of high school, I was participating in every choir, every band, every orchestra, and I was part of the production classes also. So I was learning MIDI and what now we would think of a producer. That's what I was doing. And then I got accepted into an film program at a university. And once I went to that university, it was through meeting friends and connections, and just it just fell into place is really what I can say. I came in touch with a rapper who was actually at the school on a scholarship for basketball, and he learned of my yeah. I know
Okay.
all of these. I
Yeah,
know all
no, this is good. This is good.
and he learned of my major, and he also learned of my studious demeanor, and said, "Hey, Kezia, can you put something together for me from a marketing standpoint that will help me to market my involvement in this Elephant Man and Nas concert happening in Waterloo?" Which is where I was.
Wow.
And
Okay.
so, sure. I mean, you're my friend. I have time, I will draft something. So I drafted tickets for him, posters for him, everything that promoted him. Because when you are an artist starting out and you're opening, the act that is promoted, of course, is the headliner. But for him, being in university at Waterloo, he wanted to let his Waterloo family know that he was opening for Nas. So I did that, and that was my first experience in the marketing aspect. And I put that together. And shortly after that, him and I, along with 5 other people, were living in a shared house. And my weekends would involve working with Drake, Rich Kid, Kim Davis, Ken Masters, Bishop Brigante. They were at my house
Wow.
every weekend. So I was just in.
What?
I was, yeah.
So while this is going on,
Hmm.
what was the parents' reaction?
I don't know if my parents really knew what was going on. I went away for university, so I don't know. I don't know that I shared, and it wasn't because I didn't want to share. It was because I was away for university. So for those of us that have gone away
Oh,
for
yeah,
university, home and school are just different. You know,
yeah.
I talk to my mom maybe once a week, and I wasn't really talking about the rappers because she would know them anyways. Now she does, and now she will tell everybody, you know that Drake was at my house. Do you know that? So now she uses it, but at the time it was just irrelevant. And my parents probably, if they had known, they wouldn't have been surprised. I mean, I was a personality that was always willing to help, and for them, there was never any issue with me working and helping others. It was, in this case, it actually was the experience that I could put on my resume prior to applying to some of the places that I ended up working.
So with that foundation, when did you receive your first break business wise in the music entertainment industry?
I would say I received my first break my last year of university when I became the president of the uh, Black Association. And when I became the Association of Black Students, and I was the president, and I put together a concert that brought everybody from Toronto. So all of these people I had been working with for 3 years at that point now graced the stage at this concert. And it was the first time that I saw that there was something here. And following that, I started to travel because, again, these guys are all my friends. So I'm just traveling, whether it be for fun, a road trip, or to actually do some work for them, and not being paid and not requesting to be paid either. This is just fully because, I mean, if you're going to a basketball game with a friend who happens to be on the basketball team, I'm not going to, okay, I put a poster together for you. It's nothing off my back. So, I'm now going to events and I go to award shows. And so I'm showing up to award shows with these people, all of which I've mentioned. And we go to a show that is in Buffalo. It is the award show for, unsigned artists in Buffalo. And we get there, I come back, and Boy Wonder and Kim Davis say, "Why aren't you doing this full time?" And I said, "Oh, I never even thought about that. I'm just doing it for my friends." I had a job at Procter and Gamble at the time, so I was fine. And I didn't think of moving it into the music space. And so once we had that conversation, it wasn't more than 2 months later, I quit my position at Procter
Wow.
and Gamble. I took the summer to look for internships to see how I could enter the industry, and I was hired in August, and that's the rest is history.
So hold on here. You quit knowing that you didn't have something to go to.
Correct.
Wow. Is
Yes.
that called leap of faith?
It's definitely called leap of faith. It's called leap of faith and parental support.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's part of this. That's part of
my
the
par-
leap.
Well, my parents also realized at that point that I had gotten my degree.
Yeah.
I had been working at a marketing for, I mean, technically P&G is marketing. So I was working in
Sure.
the marketing department at a consumer goods product line. And there was a point where my dad said, "Why are you going into the music industry? Why?" And he couldn't understand that there was the business side of the music industry because he had always been on the performing side of the music industry.
Yes. Yes. Get
So
it.
I remember saying to him, "Dad, what is the difference between me marketing a bottle of Tide or me marketing a living, breathing product? I am using the same transferable skills as I do to market Mr. Clean as I do Mr. Drake." You don't
There you
say
go.
The only difference, and I did say this in the conversation, the only difference is that the product that I am now marketing can speak back to me, can talk, and can dress himself. That's it. Outside of that, yes, you're going to get a little bit of attitude here and there, but the transferable skill of bringing someone to market or something to market is the same.
Wow. So, who was the first company that you worked for?
I worked for a company called Musebox, downtown Toronto. They had an office in Toronto and in New York. So I took the first job as an unpaid intern for 3 months. Well, it wasn't meant to be for 3 months. It was meant to be for whenever, but I kind of made it 3 months. So I'm like, I'm not doing this unpaid thing anymore. I need to
Right.
get down here every day. And now my parents are looking at me like, so are you going to get paid? So I turned that unpaid internship into a paid gig. And then 3 months after that, 3 months after that, actually in my interview for it, I remember talking to the president of the firm. And I said, well, I noticed that you also have an office in New York. If there's ever an opportunity for me to go to New York, let me know. I will pack my bags and I will go. So 3 months after that, the print and television initiatives lead was coming back to Canada. And she said, Keziah, do you want to go to New York? And I'm like, yep. She said, you have to be there in 2 weeks. Yep, sure. I'll be there. See ya in 2 weeks, first day. And I did. And so I took a lead position for print and television initiatives down in close to Soho, New York, but I was living on the Upper West Side. Moved there and stayed there for months.
How was the New York experience?
Loved it. Loved it. When we talk about leaps of faith, when we talk about leaps of faith, this was one, but it was one that I was fairly confident I would succeed in. When we talk about God preparing you for what's to come, you don't always know why you're doing what you're doing or how all of these life experiences may benefit you in the long run. But from the time I was 12 to the time I was 21, 22, I was going to New York City every year. My aunt, an architect in New York City, living on the Upper West Side, was the place that I spent most of my March breaks, most of my spring breaks. Anytime, it was a 10-hour drive away. My parents would always go. So I knew prior to me even accepting her offer to go to the state, I knew the train system like the back of my hand. I could get around. I knew the Upper West Side. I knew how to navigate. There was not one inkling in me that made me fearful for moving to this country and to New York, of all places. So I was well prepared. Like I said, it was probably about 10 years. And 10 years, and that prepared me. On top of the fact that after I had gone to university, I ended up going to Burkina Faso to live for 6 months.
You don't joke.
When I went, so it was one of those, again, something else, sorry about that,
No problem.
else that would stop me or would prepare me for what was to come.
What did you gain from that New York experience?
I would say the hustle mentality, but I kind of went in with the hustle mentality or the grind. What I really gained was the knowledge of how fast I needed to work to stay ahead of those that were competing against me in any way. So, when you get to New York, what ends up happening is it's a lot faster than Toronto. And because it's a lot faster than Toronto, it is where you have to keep up. There is a sense of urgency all the time. And so when I got back to Toronto, that sense of urgency was felt by anybody that I spoke to. And that kind of set me apart from those who had remained in Toronto, because I was moving a lot faster just simply by the way that I was thinking. Things were turned out a lot faster. I was going, in the spaces after I went to New York, I was in the Universal space. So marketing, it was, okay, well, when can this get done? Deadlines, timelines. It was just a different way. You could feel that things were moving along. And I think that was the biggest educational piece of me being in New York.
Nice. So when did you stop going to New York? Was that before pandemic? You stopped going to, or was
I stopped living in New York,
okay?
back in 7, 8 years ago. So 2012, 2011.
So after that period of time, what was your next position? What was your next role?
My next role, so I stayed with Musebox, came back to Toronto, and then I was with Musebox for a little bit, but I was feeling that I had learned what I needed to learn. I was looking for the next opportunity. So I just stayed pretty relevant within the music industry. And then in staying relevant, I just was talking to many people. So I remember having conversations, and one of them led me to the office of Universal Music Canada. And so I went with this artist, not for any job interview. I went simply just to support this artist. And then in that particular meeting, I was told from the person who they were meeting with at Universal that I needed to come back and that Universal needed to hire me. And so right in that meeting, they were like, hey, can we speak to her?
Oh,
So
makes the other person feel really good. Go on.
yeah, I was like, and the other person was an artist, so I mean, it worked in their benefit, because now if I'm in the building, then I at least can vouch for them in the building. So that's how that happened. I again kind of rolled into that situation, and that was with G7 Records. At the same time, I was also overseeing business operations for Kim Davis. I was overseeing business operations for some of the producers in the city. And so I was working on the side while I was working my full-time job. So those all continued to lead to different positions and opportunities. I went to a songwriting camp in St. Vincent. I traveled in Barbados. There's many different places that I went because I was working with different people at different times.
Wow. We'll have to discuss offline. I'd like to know who you spoke with at Universal. Probably I know who you spoke with, but we weren't going to give names online. We're not going to do that.
If it's the A&R, then yeah, you probably know who it is.
I probably know who it is. So you spent time with G7 Universal. What was the experience like, and what did you do after you left there?
So the experience with G7 was amazing. I always want to learn more. And so in learning more, being in this industry, having that wealth of knowledge always is to your benefit. And so when it's to your benefit, me personally, I'm always looking for the next thing that I don't know. So in this role with G7, I didn't know operations. I was brought into G7 Records from a marketing standpoint, but then I very quickly realized that there was an opportunity for me to be in operations, at which point I ended up becoming label operations manager, and I was overseeing the operations of all of their roster. Plus, I was also overseeing all of their marketing campaigns for all of the artists. So I hired a team, or there was a team underneath me that I was part of hiring, and I had them, of course, working on some of those marketing campaigns. I would sign off on those campaigns, and we would go to market with them. And then on the operational side, I was, whether it would be forging new relationships and strategic partnerships, whether it was looking at the roster and seeing, gigs, shows, events, how we were going to facilitate all of that. Same with music videos. So it was a very holistic experience. The nice thing about being at a smaller label, especially when it's a part of a big label, is that you get to do everything. There's not a lot of bureaucracy as to whether she can be part of this because she's a new hire, or whether this is part of her role and responsibilities. So the CEO of G7 Records and I are still to this day, I mean, he calls me daily for anything that he needs. And we have maintained this strong relationship just based on that work ethic.
Nice.
Mhm.
So how long were you there for, and why did you leave, and what was the next step?
I was there for 5 years, 4 going on 5, I think. And I left because Universal was acquiring EMI. And so they were acquiring EMI. I felt that the building would change as it does most times. You add new people into the group, the corporate culture just changes. And so at the time the corporate culture was changing, they were shifting offices looking for space for the EMI employees. And being part of one of the sub labels, that looked like a space that they were going to have to use for these new additional employees. So rather than moving to the new office with G7 Records, I uh, said that I was going to look for something else. And I was actively looking while I was working there. So a position at SOCAN came up, and that opportunity was in licensing. Again, for me, anything that I didn't know, I wanted to know. So this gave me the next angle of the music industry, going from publicity to label operations and marketing, which kind of fell in with publicity, now to licensing. So I applied for the job, got the interviews, got the job, and I took that position as the new business, new media lead, where I was responsible for licensing all of the user generated content providers.
Mm-hmm.
That is considered YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat. And I was also responsible for licensing the audio stream producers like DSPs, which are digital service providers, Spotify's, the Amazon Musics, the Apple Musics, anything that was in Canadian territory that a Canadian could use via an app or online radio was my responsibility. But the nice thing was that I was able to have this opportunity to work with the larger organizations,
Mm-hmm.
because now I'm working with their legal teams. And now I'm really learning, fast paced my learning tenfold in what music licensing was, to working with the people that really controlled how a company was going to pay for their music licensing.
Wow. Whew. You don't slow down, do you?
No, I don't. I am a project manager by trade. Like, I mean, my mind operates in projects. So I don't look at it as being forever busy. I look at it as having lots of projects, which motivates me even further. I can't be in positions where my responsibilities are mundane, or my daily responsibilities look the same month over month, year over year. I can't do that. So although I do a lot, to me it doesn't seem like a lot, because it's just moving pieces. It's an email here, it's a project there, it's continually staying relevant and learning, really, is what it is.
Nice. So it sounds like you were there for a while, and you moved on to another.
So then I was there for 5 years, and I had a number of positions at SOCAN. And then those positions included licensing, but then I was overseeing the A&R team, where we were supporting 150,000 members. My role there was operations specific. I was specifically there to support and manage the A&R team, but also to make things easier for them. When it came to a lot of the artists coming in who wanted to talk, with 150,000 composers and creators, everybody wants to talk to the A&R, and that can be very overbearing for an A&R. So my job was to make sure that there was a filtering system, and how that filtering system worked was really my job. And then after that, it was In Tandem, which is a company that is owned by SOCAN and Resound. And there I was, again, doing licensing, some projects.
So can you just share with our audience, what does SOCAN do?
SOCAN is responsible for administering the licenses for public performances.
Okay, fantastic. So is that where you're at now, or did you take another leap from there?
No, it was the same thing.
Yeah,
Well,
we left off, I guess, with
yes, in tandem. Yes. So in tandem, similar to SOCAN, it does the exact same thing. It is administering the right, but it's administering the public performance right for SOCAN and Resound. SOCAN focuses on the creator, the writer of public performance or whatever the public performance would be, whereas Resound focuses on the labels, the background singers, people who also need to be paid because they have participated on the recording of the master. So, to make it easier, the writer is SOCAN, the musicians are Resound. And because both need to be paid, it was easier, and I was part of the transition into this space. It was easier for SOCAN and Resound to come together to gather and reach a larger audience, knowing that everybody, whether it's a restaurant or a mall or a concert, needs to pay for the use of music intellectual property.
Okay. You have had a wonderful journey throughout the music industry or entertainment industry. How has it changed from those days where you were hanging out with a young Drake to now doing what you are now? How much has it changed?
Oh, it's changed so much. It's changed because the internet has really been used as a huge vehicle to get music out. And then, if I can use the pandemic as a great example, how many of us have been in a lockdown and just needed to listen to some music? I think back when I first started in the industry, and I would say that when I first started, some of these music platforms were just arising. Spotify was just coming on the scene, and now looking at it as being the main form of listening for a number of generations, a number of age groups, is incredible. And it gives us access to music that's not just local, but music all around the world. It also gives opportunity to artists who are not just the Drakes, but the ones who are going to be the Drakes one day. It gives us the opportunity to really support those who are new. And it gives us, Spotify has a great algorithm where they're going to send you music that they think you'll like. So you try it out. So I think in that way, the industry has definitely changed for the better. Just the expansion of music, the expansion of knowledge of new music, and not something that's a daily rotation. It's great to listen to the radio, but they have a rotation and they have only a certain set of artists that they can have on a platform. Whereas, my niece, who is 17 years old, she probably doesn't know anybody who's on the radio, and I don't know anybody she's listening to because they're all new. She's getting music from everywhere. So I think the globalization is a lot different than when I started. I can also say that the difference is the people that are now starting to come into the industry, realizing that there is a business or for you, an opportunity for you to work in business. And that has changed because there's more people that look like me. Not many, but they're coming. They are coming. When I started in the industry, there was one other Black female
Wow.
in a corporate position. And now I look around and maybe there's 2 or 3, but I do know that a generation is coming when there's going to be a lot more. And I am part of an organization called Advance. And that's exactly the platform that Advance stands on. Advance is the Black collective of music industry professionals. And the goal here is to ensure that our Black brothers and sisters, those who are younger, those who are a little older, not only see the opportunity and they're within their transferable skills to work within the music atmosphere or corporate setting, but also for the corporations to understand that we're not always the creator. We are 90% of the time able to be in the boardroom, in a meeting, as a marketing manager. We don't need to be the ones that are always the artist, which is a age-old, dilemma of, we're signing Whitney Houston, but there's no Black people to talk and to understand Whitney Houston's story. We're signing this person, but there's nobody on the flip side who's actually signing the checks, doing the marketing campaign to understand where this person may be coming from. So I think that change, especially in a year like 2020, was so evident. The corporations, organizations were called upon to really look at what their employee structure looked like and to really see how they needed to improve.
Interesting. We have a question here from Kevin Messam, and I know Kevin either was or has been a long time involved in the music industry down in the US.
Okay.
So wait, Kevin has a question here. Maybe there's two. What does that say for diversity initiatives in Canada?
Maybe there's two. What you said, maybe.
I think when you were saying there were like one or two other Black females.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, it's not good.
It
it's not good. That's what that means. So they were called out, thanks to George Floyd in his death. So much has been shown, especially on the Canadian side, not only in his death, but also with COVID. Had you not had those two things happening within the same time frame, would you not have had the eyes directly focused at industries and corporations that don't support diversity or don't use diversity as an inclusion rather than a metric that they need to meet? So what it says is that Canadian organizations, labels, music organizations, non-for-profits, funders, all of them need to look within to see really who they're hearing from and who they are truly supporting. You look at some of our funding organizations here, and Canada has a phenomenal grant system, a grant system that could essentially get you from nothing all the way to releasing albums and giving you $40,000 in marketing budgets, the entire process. But when you look at who's getting those grants, if we look at the statistics, we're going to see that there's going to be a lack of people of color who are receiving the funding. The same is with radio. Radio in Canada is mandated to have a percentage which is Canadian owned, Canadian created, and it was built in 1995. Thankfully, because of everything that's been happening, George Floyd, the show must be paused, all of these different initiatives, the Broadcasting Act is being reviewed for the first time in 20
Hold
years.
on. For the first time in what?
20 years. 23 years. Where are we? 2020? Yeah. Almost 30 years. So it's being reviewed because what happened was the CanCon was to promote Canadian talent. So we would be getting U2, we would be getting Rush, we would be getting, Barbara Streisand, and all of them would be playing on our Canadian radio. So they said, you know what, this is not really supporting our Canadian artists. Well, what they did was they found the opportunity to support the Canadian artists that looked and sounded like Rush, U2, Barbara Streisand. So that didn't even open a door for non-white people. Yeah. And instead you would hear Jane Arden, amazing. Celine Dion, amazing. But you wouldn't hear the upcoming Drake on platforms. You wouldn't hear the upcoming Weekend on platforms. Unfortunately, in Canada, we only have one or two stations that are specifically designated to hip hop within our country.
Kevin is saying here, where's the effort in finding the talent that looks like me and you?
So that has now begun. Advance, like I said, Advance is a phenomenal organization that is calling them out. And all of us that are sitting on, whether it be boards or working within that corporate structure, are making noise. And we are holding them accountable with pledges in some cases, with conversations in other cases, with highlighting the problem here. Working at SOCAN, we have millions of dollars. Like SOCAN publicly shows their revenues, and it's usually about $400 million a year.
What?
Of that, but that's not what we make it. That's what revenue comes in. But remember, because we are a performing rights organization, that also goes out. So it's going out in distribution. We work at about 10% operating budget of that. So of that $400 million, 80% of that is coming from Black or people of color. I mean, Drake being your number one artist who is signed to SOCAN, and Weeknd following up at a close second. It's, the fact that you have 4 Black people at SOCAN or 5 Black people at SOCAN is not enough. And it's not necessarily because it is the color, but it's also the experience that's brought. That's what I think most people don't realize. And that's why it's distinguishing between the metric versus the inclusion is if it's inclusion focused, then you want me to participate in your infrastructure to change your infrastructure so it has different viewpoints, angles, experiences, life experiences, lived experiences, I should say. But if it's a metric, then you just have me because I look different, not because you value my opinion.
Yeah, I'll just point out for people, one of the conversations I had probably a few months ago on Black Canada Talking was with a gentleman named David Click Cox, who is one of the driving forces behind the Advance. So if you want to find more information about Advance, I would refer you back to that conversation, because I know Keziah is not fully part of Advance, but if you want to know more about it, I would refer back to that conversation. Kevin saying, I have to say, I feel like the sheet is being pulled over our eyes again. I respect the initiatives like the Black North initiatives, but it's time to show the data and receipts.
You're right. Absolutely. So, to your point, I am just as involved in Advance as Click. We started on at the exact same time. We were part of the creation of Advance. So him and I sit on a number of committees, and we are doing exactly that, looking for the data and receipts. We are currently gathering data by way of a survey that's going to be going on that we're working with Music Canada on. We are working on programming that Click and I actually have put together. I have brought in the funding. He has brought in the ideas from the programming side. And we are looking for those receipts, because I don't think that you're wrong, Kevin, when you say that the wool is or they're trying to pull the wool over our eyes. It will take a lot for it to stay as a relative conversation, a constant conversation, because it's very easy to slip back into just doing what's easiest, especially if it means changing the entire trajectory of where your company is going based on what you had done before. Now, what I do often say in presentations is if people recognize the financial value they gain from hiring different experiences, then maybe that should be a driver, because you're more likely to make, not more likely, you are guaranteed to make a lot more money revenue wise when you have different perspectives and different understandings, because you now reach a larger audience. It's plain economics. It's pretty simple. It's just about them getting on board and, again, changing their internal structures. When you go to a website, I shouldn't only see one color of person. And I called out In Tandem's website on that. I said, guys, there's not one Black person in this. There's not one person who has a disability. There's not one person of any other culture. And yet we're for everybody? That doesn't make sense.
We could go along this, Kevin.
We could.
I'm going to hold off your comment. Just okay. But the other thing I want to take a look at is for the Black artist who wants to get involved in the industry. To me, it seems that the amount that they have to disseminate now, especially on the business side, is increased exponentially.
Yes, it's true. Yep. That specifically. Yeah, go ahead.
And how well is that average artist now being able to disseminate all the different business things they've got to go through now.
Yeah. I mean, they should have been doing it from the beginning, really, because as I say, and I put it back on the artist sometimes, this is a business. And everybody wants to know the value add. The value add in most businesses comes down to revenue. So as an artist, you do have to take it upon yourself to be as knowledgeable as you can, to show a value add the same way I do when I enter a new company with a resume. I need to be able to show where I'm going to bring you something, and something that is enough for you to bet on. In my case, it would be paying me a salary. In your case, it would be getting signed to a label, a deal, whatever it is that you specifically are looking for. So the information itself is hard to filter because it's not in one place. And I think that's the most difficult part. There are many moving pieces to the music industry. There are many organizations that are doing different things. And if I was to talk about music rights just in as one example, you have 3 organizations in Canada that focus on 3 different people or audiences. So you have CMRRA, which would be the mechanical license, anything to do with your CDs, your physicals, your downloads, or your synchronization, which is a mechanical, anything that is music tied into a visual. So if you were to look on YouTube, we would call that a synchronization, right? Then you have SOCAN, which is the public performance administering, and they would be administering for the creators and the publishers, anybody who takes a percentage of the copyright of intellectual property. And then you have Resound. And Resound is what we call neighboring rights. They are neighboring rights because they're beside the creator rights, which would be SOCAN in this case, and they are focusing on those who perform the songs. Because you have to remember, my songwriter is not always my performer. Beyonce is the songwriter and she's the performer, but Rihanna is not always the writer, but she's definitely the performer. So having that conversation with someone who is filling their head trying to figure out recording and their own creative process is difficult because it's convoluted, and it does take time to fully understand. Outside of that, you need to understand the streams of income. How else can I get income? If I'm getting income from my gig, well, I should be getting a royalty from the performing rights organization. If I have it on Spotify, then I should be getting money from Spotify. If I am working with someone on an advertisement, I should be getting money from my advertisement. So, all of these different areas it's very difficult to put them all together.
Yeah.
And for an artist, I often say to artists, you can come to me at any time and I will help you decipher between that free of charge, because I understand that it is not easy for those of us in the industry and working for corporations, but also I understand the artist, and not all artists think the same way as those of us who work in operations and marketing. So from a project manager standpoint, I understand the different areas. From an artist standpoint, I understand that you're scared. It's daunting. It's daunting.
Wow. So is there a central place that an artist can I see your
wish I could say yes. So I have created with a few other people. It's not live yet, but it's coming. And it is a knowledge hub. It is a platform, and it will be for everyone to find anything they need, from knowledge of the music rights to finding a contract that you may need to do your split sheets. And it is called On the One and it is based on this gospel scene first, because I went to a conference not too long ago, and actually I'll be there again this year, but I went to a conference and it was a gospel conference here in Canada, and I realized that I knew that artists didn't have a lot of information. I knew that there was a knowledge gap, but I also knew that SOCAN and our team was doing a really good job of reaching the different groups, audiences, schools, music schools. They were doing a large campaign that was really for the education of the music industry as a whole. But then when I went to this conference, I realized because they were gospel, they were being left out of the campaign. And so part of my journey within the industry was to always help the underdog, but especially to find the places where I can help, where other people may not go, may not be tapping into. So I went to this conference and people said to me, "What's SOCAN?" For people in the music, there's no way you should ever say what's SOCAN. That's like being in the States and saying, who's Trump? Like that just doesn't make sense. It doesn't. You need to understand that this is a stream of income for you, on top of the fact that it also creates a record of your work. If there's ever a dispute as to who wrote a song, SOCAN would be your record to say, I wrote the song, I put it up on SOCAN on this date, it was written by me, just in case it comes out in Timbuktu or in Tokyo, Japan, and you can say, no, wait, that's my song. That is infringement, right? So I realized this. I was basically like a walking celebrity all weekend because people had questions because they never heard any of this information or spoken to anyone in the corporate music scene who was coming from the secular music. I mean, I don't like to say secular because SOCAN's not secular, but there was an assumption that when you worked in corporate, you worked secular. And so that was the biggest downfall for this group, was that they weren't looking out for information from SOCAN because they thought, but I do gospel and this is not for me. Like, where'd you get that idea? Of course it's for you. So, take you back to now. I am, that was the basis of a hub that will give information to any artist. But like I said, it is for gospel artists. On the one in the gospel world means, we're going back to the one. Yeah, anybody who plays an instrument, anybody who understands the worship space knows when you go like this, we're going to the end, we're going to this, we're wrapping it around, we're doing the chorus again on the one. And then the other, play on words is on the one, being on the one God. And so it will have areas for forums. It will be free. It will be seminar based. It will be have resources. So like I said, contractual agreements, split sheets, what you need to be asking for, what you need to be looking for. It will have information on performing rights, all of these things.
Well done. So a few things. First of all, I'll go in reverse engineering order. This is for gospel. Is there anything that is going to be offered for non-gospel?
This is for everyone, because right now the information itself, it pertains to everyone. The only reason that the gospel industry was the base of it was because that's where I found there was the largest knowledge gap, and there was no information getting to them at all. But of course, I mean, it's going to be a website, so anybody can go. It's not specific to you doing gospel. It's specific to you doing music.
When is the projected launch date?
I suspect the projected launch date will be mid-February, so in about 2 weeks from now, because I am speaking up at the next Power Up, which is the gospel conference I spoke at last year, and I want to get it up before that, so I have my team kind of working on that.
Also nice with Black History Month.
And also Black History Month. You are correct.
Wow. Well, we could go on, but I know there's probably at least one young person waiting for you.
She should be okay now.
Well, I don't want to. I know that you're a great mom, so I don't want to leave that out. So I'm going to just say, do you have any? Okay, let me ask you a question. Mm-hmm. If George Floyd didn't happen, do you think these initiatives? Okay, there you go.
No, and we thank the states for that. We thank the states for the uprise, the protests, the fact that because in Canada we don't see just like blatant violence against our black men as often, and when it does happen, it's definitely not filmed and distributed the same way. So thank you for the people who were able to get that out, where it ended up being on our news feeds for so long, but then it was for the Canadian scene, everybody, not just music, it was an opportunity to say, what, this has got to stop. This has just got to stop. And it was a motivator. It was the catalyst in having these conversations. And then on the Tuesday in June, the music industry said, you know what, we're going to send in solidarity with our Black brothers and sisters and say the show must be paused. So that day was a day taken to learn about others, to learn that love should be, exceed beyond all, and that every life is valued and a Black life is valued, because right now we are the ones who are feeling the effects of not being valued. And so when that happened, Jesse Reyes, who is an artist here in Canada, called out all of the labels and said, guys, you need to look within. You're using us essentially for financial gain, but yet your corporations don't reflect the culture that you are promoting. And so it needs to. I often talk to people about Jay-Z. Nobody would wear a New York fitted if it wasn't for Jay-Z. Nobody would wear Air Force Ones if it wasn't for Nelly. Like, it just, these are direct correlations from Black music to the culture. And the culture, it lives off of the financial benefits coming from the culture and the swag that we continue to bring. So I don't think it would have happened without George Floyd. I also don't think it would have happened without COVID, because if it was just George Floyd and no COVID, the world wouldn't have had their eyes on this. Because it was George Floyd and COVID and we couldn't really do anything or go anywhere, everybody's eyes were continually glued to the TV or their phones. And so it became an 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 international protest, both physically and online, which drove the narrative.
Okay. Just saying here, Kevin Messon saying it's sad it took a Black man getting murdered in cold blood in real time to see that there's no equity. He also says props to Jesse. Exactly. Spot on. So as we, and he has hashtag culture vultures.
Culture vulture. That's a good one. That is good. It's true.
And he says, and he also says, don't take our culture and as trendsetters and not give us what is owed to us.
Yeah, you got it. They just, for us, by us, FUBU.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask, as we close out here, what is your call to action for those outside of the entertainment industry when it pertains to this area about publishing rights, Black Canadians getting their just due? What can people that are not involved in the industry do to help the cause?
Well, always speak up. If you see an injustice, always speak up. If you realize that you, in your particular industry, are sitting at a table of people that look like you, always ask questions as to why. And I think that from starting that question and continuing the conversation and knowing that you yourself, whether you are Black or not Black, can be part of that conversation, whether as by asking the questions, calling out the injustices, and not leaving it on in the hands of the Black person that's sitting there. Being inquisitive, I think, is important, and calling out the people that you're around to really say, guys, you could work in any industry and say, well, we're servicing this demographic, which is everybody. So why does this boardroom look like one person? That's what I would say.
And then what is your call to action for those who are in the industry? your peers inside what do they need to do? What do people in color in the industry need to do, no matter if they're one day in or many years in?
Join Advance. Absolutely join Advance. If you go to advancemusic.org, you will be able to sign up there, receive newsletters from us. We are always looking to hear from you for initiatives, for programming. We also want you to give us your experiences, because through numbers, especially with this organization, we are able to go back sometimes, and definitely anonymously for those who are in the industry, we're able to go to those organizations and ask them for either a pledge or have a conversation or ask them why things look the way they look. So I think that that's definitely on one side, for especially for those who are business professionals. Absolutely. And then for those who are artists within the industry, if there is any way that you can support it by how you writing. If you feel something, use your creative platform to get that music out. If you need any assistance with that creative platform, I am always happy to have a conversation and help you navigate this very convoluted area, that's for sure.
Keziah, thank you so much. I know that the producer put up your Instagram handle, so it's just @ and her name. That's her Instagram handle right there if you want to reach out. We also, just a few moments ago, put out the website for Advance. They're always looking for good people. I know David Click. I've known Ian Andre Espinay for years.
Yes, I hear.
I mentored him from a long time in an organization called Each One Teach One. But thank you for all you've done, all you are doing, you will be doing. Most importantly, thank you for being an outstanding mother.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Keziah's, there's a question for Keziah. Kevin's asking, is UMAC still in operations?
I can't give you a definitive on that because last I heard it was not, but I haven't heard that from the horse's mouth. So I actually, and it depends what UMAC group you're talking about.
Yeah.
To give you a little bit of background, I sat on the UMAC board.
Oh, wow.
5-6 years ago, maybe. And at that point, it was led by Will Strickland.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So I sat on, and I was the operations for UMAC.
Wow.
Yes, we definitely go back a little bit of a ways. So it was run by Will Strickland at the time. Will Strickland, then it was dissolved, and it was dissolved just, I think a lot of it was because of frustration within the Canadian industry. People weren't taking to it. Finances were hard to come by. Systemic racism is real, especially when it comes to grant funders and, who they were funding versus, one versus the other. And then it was dissolved. And then there was another organization that took up the name, and that name, it escapes me right now who that person was that took it up, but I haven't seen anything from them for a very long while. So I cannot confirm. Sorry.
Okay. Now we're done. Natalia Bailey, thank you, saying this is really helpful. I'd like to thank Natalia. I'd like to thank Kevin. I'd like to thank Birdie Lynn from Tennessee, Ryan Singh, and everyone else who watches live or on the replay. Thank you for helping make it an epic conversation. My name is Dr. Vibe, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of epic conversations. I'm the host of Epic Conversations 2020 Podcast News and 2018 Innovation Award winner, given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. Also, once a month, I host an online show, the only one in the world for dads and fathers, that is sponsored by Dove Men Care. It's also co-sponsored by Dad Central, Canada's national fatherhood organization. As always, I'd like to close out. Live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get small to get stronger. Block assumptions, aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. Love, faith, and respect. Also, big thanks to BIA Media for the production of this epic conversation. And remember to give yourself grace. God bless, peace be well, and keep the faith. Bye-bye.